Hello, it's Thursday, and that means it's time for Palace Confidential, your weekly look at all things royal, brought to you by The Mail. I'm Jo Elvin, and on today's show, we look at the latest move to cut Prince Harry and Prince Andrew out of royal affairs, more jobs for the King, and the return of state visits. Here to tackle all that and so much more is the Daily Mail's royal editor, Rebecca English, and the Daily Mail's diary editor, Richard Eden. Welcome to you both. Rebecca, I'm going to come to you first. Your colleague on The Mail on Sunday, Kate Manzi, reported at the weekend that despite everything, he's still keen to fight back. He's like Darth Vader in that scene where he just keeps coming up the riverbank. No limbs, no head.
That's a thought,
Surely it's impossible.
Well, I mean, it's what I hear too. He does think he can still hold a meaningful role within the royal family. But I mean, I just think he's, on cuckoo land when it comes to that. Look, I always say with Andrew, only two people know the truth of the allegations that were made about him all those years ago. But he is guilty of criminally bad professional judgment when it comes to his job and his role in public life. And, it's the kind of judgment that, anyone would get sacked from their jobs. If they were a politician, they would be made to stand down. Now, I know in the UK we've seen politicians bounce back up within days of losing a job recently. But they hold a really unique position in public life, members of the royal family. And I just don't think there is any appetite for him to return. Could go and do charity work. No one's going to stop him doing that, but not...
Some of the charities might, as we discussed last week. But Richard, I understand that you tweeted a potential solution.
Oh, well, this was just that the King chose his birthday to announce that he'd given himself a present. He'd given himself a new job.
I always do that.
To add to the others, which is quite nice. But it was Ranger of Windsor Great Park. So just sort of supervising, making sure that everything's fine. And I just commented that's the sort of job maybe that would have been good for Prince Andrew. It's not particularly public, not particularly high profile, but it would have given him a sort of meaningful role. Like
Groundskeeper Willie in The Simpsons.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
But other people pointed out that that's still too public, and it really is telling that the King wouldn't let him have even a job like that. So, I mean, maybe one of the private estates, like Balmoral or Sandringham, he could do something there. But I think it's a bit of a blow that he hasn't been given some sort of job.
Do you think he should be a park ranger, Rebecca?
Well, the trouble is that he'd have to be dealing with some of the people he's not been very nice to over the years. And I mean, obviously, it's a funny...
everybody?
Yeah, it's a funny suggestion by Richard, but actually, when it comes to that ranger role, which dates back to Elizabethan times, for the last 300 years, it's always been a sovereign apart from Duke of Edinburgh, but then he was the kind of number 2 resident of Windsor Castle, and Andrew obviously lives on the estate for the time being. How long, we don't know. But it does go to the nub of what to do with a problem like Prince Andrew.
My other question, Richard, is how many jobs can a king have, especially an elderly king?
Well, frankly, he can have as many as he likes.
Oh, right, okay.
That's the true answer.
Got you.
No, the thing is, though, with the King's vision of this slimmed-down monarchy, what we will see is more and more jobs going to him or Camilla, despite their age, or to William and Catherine. But it's such a small number. Personally, I'm not sure that's the right route to go down at all, but it does seem that that's the way he's going. So, the problem is, how much can he then contribute in these roles, like at Windsor, whereas Andrew would be able to spend most of his time looking after the affairs of Windsor Great Park. In reality, the King will just be able to sort of take a passing interest, I would have thought.
Some would argue he's the perfect man for the job, given his passion for, gardening, organic farming, forestry. There's very few people in public life that know more about the running of a state than him.
No, well, he's already got Highgrove, his personal estate.
Sandringham.
He's got Sandringham, he has a few to keep an eye on.
Wow, something to think about. Now, I just want to quickly touch on something we've talked about many times on this show, this issue of the counsellors of state, and there seems to finally, Rebecca, be a solution.
Palace Confidential asks, the Royal Family Act. And there has been...
A few months down the line. But
well, you know, better late than never.
Yeah.
I think, to be fair, actually, it was you, Richard, that really kind of picked up on this as an issue. And we have had some developments this week, a very major development, that the King let it be known to Parliament that he would be very happy if they would expand the number of counsellors of state to include his brother and sister, the Earl of Wessex and the Princess Royal. The other counsellors of state are always the spouse of the sovereign and the next 4 adults in line to the throne. And I think it's seen by the royal family as quite a kind of elegant solution. It's still got to go through Parliament yet. Legislation will have to be enacted to ensure this happens, but I can't imagine that it won't. So,
am I to understand that with the expansion of the amount of counsellors of state, we're still not discussing diminishing that responsibility for Andrew and Harry?
Well, what this means is that they won't need to be called upon. We've got cases coming up next year when we'll have the King and Prince William will both be abroad or on tours. And so then it would have been the case that Harry or Andrew might have been called on to sign documents or whatever. And that won't happen now because it will be Anne and Edward who are asked first. So it's significant what's happened, very significant. And it is a blow to Harry and Andrew.
That's what I was going to say. So by proxy, they've been sort of frozen out yet again of another duty. How do you think they'll feel about that?
I think they'll be... I think they knew it was coming. I think they might be pleased that it hasn't been done in a permanent way. Personally, I would have liked to have seen them, just being stripped of the role. I think it's ridiculous that you've got counsellors of state, who lives in California and won't ever carry out any duties. But this is a way of not antagonising them too much. And also, very interestingly, I was told that the King is keen to keep the door open, basically. So he's signalling that it's not all over. And particularly in the case of Harry, there is a way back. He could, if he came back to Britain, for example, he could go back to being an active counsellor of state. So it's still there for him. It's a way of not shutting him out. So it does suggest the King thinks, things could change in the future.
What do you think, Rebecca? Obviously, we're never going to have a situation where the King says, these lot are out and this lot are in. But is this, do you think, a very unsubtle setting out of the King's position?
Yeah, so obviously in the UK, unlike other countries around the world, we have the kind of whole unwritten constitution, and the monarch holds a unique position in that. They are a constitutional monarch who can't just suddenly say, I'll change the law on a whim. So they actually have to often do it or make changes by an expression of their wishes. And obviously that can be through normally a letters patent, but obviously in this case, actually going to Parliament and saying, I would be very happy if you do this. And, as I say, there is the option for Parliament not to do it, but I can't imagine they wouldn't do it. So, and I think, as I said before, it's quite a kind of diplomatic way of doing this and making the change without poking the bear that is his son, antagonising even further his brother. It's just saying, look, let's just try and expand the role and do it a little bit differently.
Interesting. Watch this space. Well, I want to move on now. We had lots of comments on last week's episode and we loved reading them as ever. Elizabeth Ann Gray writes about Prince Andrew. Andrew could take a leaf out of Profumo's book. There's a leaf regarding charity work and keeping a low profile. However, Music Morsel does open the door to Andrew again. Might there be someday a chance for Andrew to come back for official royal duties, perhaps in the same way that Camilla has over the years gained wider acceptance for standing quietly by Charles's side throughout their marriage? But instead of expecting to be forgiven right now, Andrew should step back for a long while, and who knows, new evidence might come out to clear his name, and all the public's views may change over time. Thank you for that very well thought out position. We've been pulled up on a couple of points though too. Joy Hughes writes, as a New Zealander, I'm embarrassed to say that during the Queen's 1986 royal tour of New Zealand, she was hit with an egg thrown by a woman protesting Britain's treaty with the Maori tribes. The Queen was standing in an open vehicle and the egg trickled down her coat. Meanwhile, Jackie Baldwin shared the late Queen's brilliant response, which was that she preferred her eggs for breakfast. Classy to the end. Tai Tien says, enjoyed your discussion about the monarch approving a possible marriage partner for Archie, but you all assumed he would choose a woman and thus overlooked the possibility that he would choose a male partner. Other than that oversight, I really enjoy your podcast. And he goes on to say that he's also a fan of The Crown, despite knowing that it plays fast and loose with the truth. Point taken, Tai. We don't want to assume anything for Archie, so please do keep those comments coming in. Leave them below. Email us on palace@mailplus.co.uk or let us know on social media, where we are at mailplus. We'll answer a couple of your questions a bit later on. Now, on Monday, we have another special episode for you, and I will be speaking to Daily Mail columnist and royal biographer Robert Hardman about his book, Queen of Our Times. He has updated the biography after the death of Her Majesty for a special commemorative edition. Should be a very interesting chat. Do join us then. But we've still got lots to talk about on this show, so let's return to my panel. Next week sees the first state visit to the UK since 2017, as the South African president and his wife will be hosted at Buckingham Palace. Rebecca, coming to you first, what can the South African delegation expect?
I'm really excited about this. I love covering state
Good
visits.
for you.
Because you just see how well the monarchy works. You know, these things are like a well-oiled machine. And we are going to see, for the first time since President Trump's visit, we're going to see a state banquet. Tiaras are going to be dusted off. The royal family will be there in their finery. There'll be a huge reception on the Mall where there will be military, there'll be bands, there'll be pomp, there'll be ceremony. And they do very clever things, like they'll come in and they'll look at an exhibition put out by the Royal Collection of these fascinating artefacts, and many of won't have been seen for hundreds of years, that show the links between us and the country that's visiting. And to just kind of be a bit of a stato, I mean, the royal family's power of soft diplomacy is a big selling point for the government. And South Africa, I think, when I was reading my notes, that the South African UK trade is worth over £10 billion a year. And our trade with South Africa, is 30% of what we do on the entire continent. So it shows you just how important these state visits are for us as a country, as UK PLC, moving forward.
And which other royals do you think we'll see? Because they do tend, I remember Princess Anne, not looking that pleased to be walking into a state visit with President Trump, but
they will all be rolled out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a three-line whip for these things. So anybody that has, anything to do with the royal family, I mean, it's the kind of thing we may even see Beatrice and Eugenia. I mean, I don't know, we haven't had the full breakdown yet, but you would see Anne, the Wessexes, the Gloucesters, the Kents, obviously the Waleses,
no Prince Andrew, I suspect.
No Prince Andrew, no.
Really? Oh dear. But Richard, it wasn't just COVID that really put the halt on these state visits. They are quite rare, aren't they?
Well, it used to be, it's about sort of once a year perhaps, but it seems like such a long time since the last one.
When was the last one? 2017?
Like Rebecca said, I'm really excited. As a social diarist, I live for things like this. We love the stories about who's invited, who's not, all of sort of...
You're such a bitch.
Britain's great and good. They're all desperate for an invitation, with their husband or wife, and so very exciting, and it's a big honour for South Africa, and they'll be really throwing out all the works for it.
And also, sorry to interject, but you can all see the benefit straight away. So, for example, contacts of mine were saying when President Obama came for his state visit, he was really popular with the Queen and the staff. And she said, I know you like to kind of keep fit. Would you like to use our gym? And they would see him kind of walking along the lawn in the morning, whistling off to the gym. And there were people on the running machine who suddenly realised they were running next to the President of the United States. But the Queen also gave his daughters, when they came to visit another time, a trip around the quadrangle in one of the carriages, and it kind of set a really enduring friendship between the Obamas and the royal family, which obviously benefited this country. Even President Trump, we were all on tenterhooks when he was coming to visit.
Was he offered the gym?
He was not offered the gym, Joe.
Right. Oh.
Got very naughty.
Yeah,
but he actually went down quite well. He was clearly really excited to be there, had a lot of respect for the Queen, really was very clear to mind his P&Qs. I remember looking at him at one point when he was looking round an exhibition. He kind of looked at them like that and kind of shrugged his shoulders.
All the Trump family were there, weren't they? Do you remember with the children?
But I also remember President Trump just stomping ahead in front of her like she wasn't there on some sort of like military parade.
That was at Windsor. That was at Windsor, yeah. But they said actually he was charm personified, and maybe less successful. Well, not less successful, but there were certain issues. For example, with the Chinese state visit, the more recent one, which again was very important because it was seen as a real breakthrough in terms of Anglo-Chinese relations. But the Chinese delegation were very keen to bring their own drinks in because they clearly didn't trust the palace water or soft drinks on offer, and the palace was saying basically, no, you get what you're given by us.
I don't think anyone's been poisoned at the palace for many a year.
No, exactly. And
did you think that was a genuine concern?
No, I mean, when I put it to the palace at the time, they were denying it. I was like, I know my sources are spot on, and they later admitted to me, yeah, it was true.
Wow. Well, stick to the end of the show for some fascinating pictures of state banquets over the years. Rebecca, we may not see you for a couple of weeks now because after covering next week's festivities, you're off on another royal trip.
I am, yeah. I'm off to Boston. It's our first royal trip for a few months, actually, with the Prince and Princess of Wales. It's obviously William's big Earthshot, the kind of annual environmental awards that he has organised. And they're actually going to, I don't think I can give too much away in terms of the programme, but there's going to be several engagements in the days before that. So it's a big, big thing for them. So, yeah, I'll be off in Boston. But I'll try and do a report from Boston.
Can we come? Can we do a Palace Confidential from there?
I'd love that.
Producer, let us do a Palace Confidential from Boston.
Why not? Yeah. Come along.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Well, it is question time now, and this first one is more of a comment, but I'm wondering if Rebecca could respond to it. Nancy Raymond says, the title of the Duke of Edinburgh is hereditary. It means Edward will pass the title to one of his children. Charles has already said he doesn't want that because he only wants the working royals to be George, Charlotte and Louis if there is still a monarchy. Any comment on that, Rebecca?
Well, the thing is, you don't have to be a working royal, and you know the title and being a working royal are not necessarily go hand in hand. So the family could take on, the Wessexes could take on the Edinburgh title, and it could be handed down to their children. But it doesn't mean their children then have to be working royals. So, and I think it'd be a real shame if we lost that because it's so synonymous with Prince Philip, and you know he carried out his duties in support of the Queen so brilliantly over the years. I just think it would be a shame to lose that from the family.
You're nodding there, Richard. Do you agree?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, we'll see. See what happens with that.
Okay. Well, we've got This is a very odd one to read out. SDU1848, the Twitter handle, I presume, asks, what are the panellists' opinions of Mike Tindall's turn on I'm a Celebrity? Richard, how do you think he's doing?
He seems to be doing great. He's benefited because the main attraction on this reality show has been Matt Hancock, a former minister who should be looking after his political duties, but instead is in the jungle in Australia on this programme. So there hasn't been too much emphasis on Mike Tindall, but he's been his usual sort of jolly self, and he hasn't said anything that's been too troublesome. He's given some great anecdotes. There was a brilliant one about how he was at a party that was thrown for Zara's 30th birthday, and he was dancing away at the disco in some old flares he had, but they were quite tight at the top.
Just 70s themed, wasn't it?
70s themed, and
she wasn't 30 in the 70s.
He was, jiving away a bit too vigorously, and his trousers ripped. And there he was.
Well, he's a big lad.
He was a big lad, and he looked down and he saw that his boxer shorts were exposed, and on them was written, "Nibble my nuts."
Can you say that on Palace Confidential?
His mother-in-law, Princess Anne, took one look at him and said, I think I'll avoid that, or something like that.
Yeah, I think I'll pass.
I think he's coming across really well. I think he might win it. There's my prediction.
I just love that anecdote about Princess Anne because we can all just imagine her saying it and the look of disdain on her face, but going away and having a laugh about it afterwards. I really like that.
I love
but
that
I do
too.
think he's got to be careful, I have to say, because I know he's not a working royal and never had a title or anything like that, but he has a strong association with the royal family, so I think he's got to be quite careful.
Yeah,
didn't he say something derogatory about quote unquote all politicians?
Yeah, he did, and I think that was very close to the mark.
Yeah,
and it's not a great route to go down. I don't want to see more members of the royal family going on reality shows like
Maybe
this.
that's what Prince Andrew could do.
No, please do not give him any ideas. This is not.
Oh, I can think of quite a few things I'd like to feed to Prince Andrew.
I've just got
great
visions
idea.
of It's a Royal Knockout all over again, wouldn't it?
Anyway, moving on. Shirlene Rossi Kennedy writes, very nice interview. Well, thank you very much. But why did you move location? Great view. Well, I can answer that one, Shirlene. We moved because we had to. They're sort of renovating and we're building a new studio that we hope to be in the new year, or the builders have said just 6 weeks. So I'd say like 2024.
I was
something
about
like
to
that.
say, see you in a couple of years.
Yeah. One more final question for Richard. Now, this comes from Gingerroot, who says, I love Richard Eden's voice. Well, there's always one. Where is he from? He's got a bit of a George Harrison thing going on.
I'm not sure I ever heard George Harrison speak, actually. I heard him sing a lot, but never speak. But he, of course, was from Liverpool. Whereas
Gingerroot says it's working for you, whatever your
right.
accent.
Well,
What is your accent? Tell us.
I grew up in London, so I haven't got much in common accent-wise with George Harrison.
But you are an international man of mystery, Richard, so, you know.
But I do
Can
love
you
Liverpool.
sing? Can you play the guitar?
No, please. That's not here. Not here.
Okay, well, Richard will be available on Twitter to answer more of these deeply personal questions. Thanks for those of you who do write. As with the comments, leave those questions below. You can email us on palace@mail.co.uk, mailplus.co.uk, or social media where we are at mailplus, and we'll look at more of those next week. Well, it's montage time and some of our favourite pictures of the royal family hosting heads of state from across the globe. Before we get to those, just time to remind you to look out for Robert Hardman's interview on Monday and to say thank you to my panel, Rebecca English and Richard Eden, or is it George Harrison? Thank you for watching. We'll see you